He had everything: wealth, respect, power, but behind those glass walls and gold cufflinks, he hid something darker than greed. This is the story of the billionaire who stole from his own company and somehow walked away clean. His name was Daniel Cross. To the world, he was a self-made genius. The kind of man every magazine called the future of business. He built a massive tech empire from nothing. Sleek offices, thousands of employees, investors lined up to shake his hand. Cameras loved him, and so did the public. Every time he smiled on TV, people saw success, innovation, leadership. But what they didn't see, what even his closest partners didn't know, was that Daniel was already planning his greatest con. In the beginning, Daniel really did believe in what he built. He was passionate, hungry, and brilliant. He worked nights, slept in the office, and turned his dream into a billion-dollar company before he turned 35. But success changes people. And for Daniel, success became an addiction. He didn't crave money anymore, he craved control. Every deal, every camera flash, every article calling him visionary made him feel untouchable. And that feeling was dangerous. The first lie started small. A temporary adjustment in the company's books, he called it. Just a few million moved from one department to another to balance the numbers. His CFO asked questions, but Daniel brushed it off with a charming smile. "It's just timing," he said. "We'll correct it next quarter." They did, and nobody looked twice. But that little adjustment was the start of everything that followed. Within a year, Daniel had learned to manipulate the company's financials like a magician. Hidden accounts, shell subsidiaries, paper trails that led nowhere. He started moving small amounts of money into a private fund that technically didn't exist. It wasn't greed, at least not at first, it was ego. He told himself he deserved it. "I built this company. I made these people rich. Why shouldn't I take a little extra?" He convinced himself it wasn't stealing. It was a reward, but soon, a little extra became tens of millions. Then hundreds. He used that hidden money to buy properties, fund secret ventures, even gamble on startups he wanted to control quietly. No one suspected a thing because everyone trusted him. The board worshipped him. The employees saw him as a hero, and the media called him the golden billionaire. Then one day, the first crack appeared. A young internal auditor named Rachel found a strange entry while preparing the quarterly report. It was small, just a wire transfer that didn't fit the usual pattern. She flagged it, assuming it was an accounting mistake. But when she tried to trace it, the system blocked her access. That was odd. Access restrictions didn't apply to her department. She mentioned it to her manager, who told her, "Don't dig too deep." The CEO handles those personally. Wasn't the kind to ignore red flags. Over the next few weeks, she quietly began pulling files, comparing numbers, and reconstructing transactions. And the more she dug, the more she realized how deep the hole went. There were hidden transfers, ghost companies, false invoices, all leading back to Daniel himself. She couldn't believe it. The man everyone idolized, the man who built the company, was robbing it from within. But Rachel knew exposing him wouldn't be easy. He had lawyers, influence, and billions of dollars. She was just an employee. Still, she gathered evidence, copied records, and built a confidential file. Then, one night, Daniel found out. It was almost midnight when his security chief called him. "Sir, there's been unauthorized data access," he said. Daniel opened the logs and saw Rachel's name. For the first time in years, he felt fear. He could lose everything, not just his money, but his image, his empire, his legacy. That night, he made a decision. He wouldn't let anyone destroy what he built, not even if it meant destroying someone else's career. The next morning, Rachel was called into HR. They accused her of violating company policy, of accessing restricted data. She tried to explain, but no one listened. By the end of the day, her ID badge was deactivated. Security escorted her out. Just like that, she was gone. Her laptop confiscated, her files deleted. At least, that's what Daniel thought. But Rachel had backed everything up. Every transfer, every fake company, every forged signature. She sent the entire file to an investigative journalist she trusted before she was fired. Weeks later, the story broke. Billion-dollar fraud allegations at Cross Technologies. The headline spread like wildfire. News channels camped outside the company's headquarters. Investors panicked. Stocks crashed overnight. For the first time, Daniel's name was linked not to genius, but to corruption. He denied everything, of course. With perfect calm, he told reporters, "These are lies." I built this company with honesty and hard work. He hired the best lawyers in the country. His PR team flooded the internet with positive stories. The board launched an independent review, and somehow, it worked. The investigation stretched for months. Evidence disappeared. Whistleblower statements got discredited. Key witnesses withdrew. When the dust settled, Daniel walked out clean. The case was dropped for lack of evidence. Rachel tried to fight back, but no one wanted to listen anymore. She was labeled disgruntled, accused of fabricating data to seek revenge. The world moved on. The company's stock recovered. Investors came back. Daniel smiled on TV again, saying he was grateful for the trust of our community. He looked calm, composed, and victorious. But something had changed. He had won, but he wasn't free. Every night, when he sat in his penthouse overlooking the city, he could feel the weight of what he'd done pressing down on him. The silence in that luxurious space was suffocating. He had more money than ever before, but less peace than he'd ever known. His reflection in the glass didn't look like the hero the world saw. It looked like a man haunted by his own shadow. Years passed. Daniel expanded his empire, bought new companies, built bigger offices, and surrounded himself with people who praised him. But he couldn't trust any of them. Every handshake felt fake, every smile suspicious. He started isolating himself, terrified someone would discover the truth again. And then one night, while attending a charity gala, he saw a familiar face in the crowd, Rachel. She wasn't the timid auditor anymore. She looked confident, calm, and powerful. She had joined a global financial watchdog organization, helping others expose corporate corruption. For a brief second, their eyes met across the room. No words, no confrontation, just a silent recognition. Daniel's heart stopped. He smiled politely for the cameras, but his mind was screaming. She knew what he had done. She had always known. After that night, he couldn't sleep. He'd wake up at 3 a.m., sweating, hearing phantom sirens outside. He started keeping his phone off, paranoid of investigations that weren't even happening. His empire still thrived, his fortune still grew, but his mind slowly collapsed under the weight of his own lies. In interviews, he still talked about ethics and vision, but inside he felt nothing. His laughter sounded hollow. The awards, the success, they all meant nothing now. He had stolen billions, but in the process, he had stolen something far more valuable: his peace, his humanity, his soul. One evening, as he stared at the skyline from his office, he realized something terrifying. No one even cared anymore. The world had forgotten. The scandal was old news. Investors were making money again. Employees were getting bonuses, and people had moved on. He had gotten away with it. Completely. But somehow that was the worst punishment of all. Because he knew the truth, and the truth never dies. He once thought money could buy silence. That power could erase guilt. But guilt isn't something you can hide in offshore accounts. It follows you everywhere, whispering when the world goes quiet. Daniel's empire continued to grow. His name appeared on magazines again, and people clapped when he walked into rooms. But behind those applause and cameras, there was an emptiness he couldn't escape. He was a man who had everything and nothing. Years later, when he finally stepped down as CEO, he wrote a letter to the board. It was short, clean, professional. But there was one line at the end that no one understood. The numbers were always mine. But the cost was everything. He left the country quietly. Some say he retired to Europe. Others claim he started another company under a different name. But no one really knows. He just disappeared, like a shadow fading at sunrise. Rachel, on the other hand, kept fighting. She became a voice for transparency and justice. Her courage inspired others to speak up against corruption. She never mentioned Daniel publicly again, but sometimes when journalists asked her what drove her passion, she would smile and say, "Because some people got away once, and I'll make sure it never happens again." And somewhere, watching the news from a quiet villa far away, Daniel would see her face on TV and turn it off immediately, because deep down he knew, no matter how far he ran, he could never truly escape himself. He had built an empire on lies. He had stolen from his own creation. He had fooled the world and beaten the system. But in the end, the person he couldn't fool was the one in the mirror: money, fame, success. But he lost the only thing that mattered: peace. Because the truth is, when you steal from others, you can repay it. But when you steal from yourself, there's no way back, and that's how the billionaire who stole from his own company got away with it. at least in the eyes of the world.